August 22nd, 27th edition of the MMAOB Daily podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Guys, follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. This podcast is available, as always, at MMAOddsbreaker.com and on our YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Also, check me out at bjpenn.com and MMA Rings on Net. So I'll be talking about tonight's Contender series, previewing that card, as well as a bunch of fight announcements, including a really big middleweight fight, which I'm really excited to talk about with you guys. Also, I want to mention that myself and Cole Shelton will be doing a full UFC China preview immediately following this show. So definitely check that out. But let's start with tonight's Contender series. So from what I've seen, it's a decent card. There's some pretty good fights on this one. We'll start with the top, work our way down. Main event of the evening, middleweight bout between Dusko Todorovic and Teddy Ash. Teddy Ash is one of the top Canadian prospects right now. He normally fights a light heavyweight, but he has fought at middleweight in the past. We'll see what happens when he moves up or moves down here to middleweight to take on Todorovic, who's a really good prospect. Let's talk about both these guys. So the odds, I should say, are minus 325 for Todorovic, Ash plus 250. Those are the opening odds. Todorovic has been bet up slightly since then. Todorovic is 25 years old. He's unbeaten, 8-0 record. All his wins by stoppage. He actually knocked out Michel Pereira in his last fight. Michel Pereira is doing really well in the UFC right now, so that was a great win for him. The guy's a really good prospect, fighting out of, I believe, Serbia, and he takes on Ash here, who's, again, a great prospect as well from Canada, 29 years old. He has some pretty good wins on his resume, including wins over Seth Brzezinski and Dominic Steele, both former UFC fighters. I really like Ash. I like this guy a lot. I've heard about him for a while now. But Todorovic, I think, is going to win this fight. I do believe he is the better fighter. I think this is kind of a bad matchup for Ash. Kind of feel bad for him here because I think there's other guys he could have beaten on the show, but I think Todorovic is probably going to beat him here. So I like Todorovic. I think he wins this fight, and I'm not surprised the odds were the way they were. Next up, we have a middleweight bout between Kalin Hill and Impa Kisangani. Hill, I should say the odds, yeah. Hill are minus 325, Kisangani plus 215. Those were the opening odds. Hill's 5-0, Kisangani's 5-0. So both guys same record. Hill's 24 years old. He's fought his last 4 fights in LFA, winning all of them very impressively. Kisangani, he's 25 years old. He actually just began fighting as a pro earlier this year, which is crazy. He already has 5 wins since making his pro debut back in January. So that's pretty incredible. He's fought for LFA, King of the Cage, Island fights. Both great prospects. This is going to be a good fight here, guys. I like this one a lot. I kind of lean towards the dog a little bit. Kisangani, this guy seems like a real just student in the game and a real natural in the sport. I mean, 5-0 in his first year fighting. It's crazy. If this guy makes it to the UFC after like 9 months of being a pro, that's absolutely insane. So I think he's got a chance to win this fight. The odds obviously are lopsided here, but we've seen so many upsets this season. I think this could be another one, guys. I would take Kisangani personally, and right now I'm looking at the odds. He's plus 270, so I think you have to take a shot on him here personally. I think there could be some value. Next up, we have a lightweight bout between Sang-Hoon Yu and Peter Barrett. Barrett opened at minus 175. Yu opened at plus 135. Right now, it's basically a pick 'em. It looks like a pretty close fight on the best fight odds here, pretty much across the board. So definitely a close one. Wu's 29 years old. It's one of South Korea's top prospects. One thing that's going against him, though, he hasn't fought in over a year, which I don't like. Barrett's 33 years old, so he's the oldest guy in this card tonight. He's been fighting in CS and Cage Titans. We know a lot of their prospects have come onto the show and into the UFC. He's been fighting since 2013 as a pro. But he's just 2-3 in his last 5 fights. So I'm a little surprised that he was not only favored at open, but also the fact that he was signed in general. It's kind of surprising that they'd sign a guy that's had so many losses recently. Just based on the age advantage and the unbeaten record, I kind of lean toward you. Barrett obviously has more experience. That could come into play here, but he is an older guy, and I'm just a little surprised by this matchup. So we'll see what happens. But, personally, this is one of the fights I'm not as much interested in, but it could be good. We'll see what happens there. Next up, we have a heavyweight bout between Ben Sosoli and Dustin Joinson. Ben Sosoli, by the way, it opened at minus 120 apiece, so I should mention that. And right now, Joinson's actually a small favorite. But I'll start with Sosoli. He's 29 years old. He's the top heavyweight prospect from Australia. He's on a 4-fight win streak. Joinson, he's been fighting as a pro since 2014. He only has 5 fights, though, in 5 years since he started as a pro, or 6 years, I guess. This is a heavyweight fight. Can go either way. Who knows? I lean towards the Canadian here, Joinson. I think he does get the win, just a little bit more he's not as experienced, actually, if you look at total fights, but I just feel like he has fought better guys, and I think he's fought in better shows. I think he wins this fight, but it's a heavyweight fight between two guys that aren't even in the UFC, and that's the kind of fight you wouldn't want to bet on. So pass on it, but joins as my pick. Finally, we have a featherweight bout between Dylan Lockhart and TJ Brown. Brown open -155, Lockhart +115. Right now, Brown's still the favorite, so no surprise there, I guess. Lockhart, I'll start with him. 6-1 record. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He's been fighting in CES and NEF over on the East Coast. Again, some pretty good shows. Brown's 29 years old. He's on a 3-fight win streak, including a knockout and LFA in his last fight. So that's pretty good. Again, another fight that can go either way. Really, I have no idea who's going to win this fight, but I'm going to pick Brown. He does have more experience. He has 19 fights compared to 7 for Lockhart. I think that could be the difference here. We'll see what happens. But yeah, for this card, like many cards this summer on Contender Series, I do expect a couple fights that we didn't see going the way that the odds are. But I think one of them could be Kisangani, and I think a +270 right now. Those are some odds you gotta pick up on, because I think this kid's pretty good, and I think those kind of odds, that's pretty good. It's a pretty good bet for a dog, and I like Todorovic quite a bit too. So those are the kind of guys that tonight I'm looking out for. But we'll see what happens. It should be a good card. It's the last Contender Series of the summer, so I've enjoyed talking about it with you guys all summer. But it's the last one until maybe next year. We'll see. Dana White said there could be another season at the end of the season. End of this year, I should say. I don't see that happening. He also said that they're running out of talent right now, so probably going to be wait till next summer, which is fine with me. I think this should be a summer thing. I know they did the Brazilian Contender Series last year. I don't think that's happening now, but either way, it was a pretty good season. A lot of guys made it to the UFC. A lot of girls made it to the UFC. So we'll see what happens in their careers. But one more card tonight, and hopefully it's a good one. All right, couple pieces of news here, and I'll get into the fight announcements. CB Dollaway has been suspended 2 years for taking banned substances. I mean, wow. Like, I was pretty surprised when I saw this one. He hasn't fought in a while. He hasn't fought since September of last year. I'm going to read what it says here. On August 16th, it was reported that Dollaway tested positive for anastrozole, a growth hormone-releasing peptide, a metabolite of GHRP2 and GHRP6, in a sample collected on December 19th, 2018. In addition, he tested positive for clomiphene on an out-of-competition sample collected on February 9th, 2019. Dollaway also tested positive for receiving intravenous infusions, those are IVs, over the allowable limit in December 2018. As a result, Dollaway has been suspended 2 years by USADA retroactive from December 13th, 2018, and he's eligible to fight again on December 13th, 2020. Dollaway indicated he was unknowingly in contact with the substance from a stem cell procedure done in Mexico. I mean, do we really believe him? No. Obviously, like, that's a lot of stuff to test positive for. It's just, to me, it's a guy looking to extend his career. I don't really know too much about CB Dollaway as a person or anything like that. Like, I just watched him as a fighter over the years. I don't think you can be like, oh, he's a quiet guy, he didn't take roids. Like, I don't know. Like, anyone could take bad substances in the sport. I've been reading a little bit about the stuff he's tested positive for, not necessarily, the super steroids that some guys have taken in the past, but definitely he was cheating, and he got caught cheating, and he's been suspended 2 years. So 36 years old now. He'll be fighting again in 2020. I'd imagine the UFC releases him. Like, I don't see why they keep him around. He's an old guy now. Just hasn't put on good fights. He's struggling to fit in between light heavyweight and middleweight. He doesn't look good in a long time. So I think that's it for CB Dollaway's career, if I had to guess. Maybe the UFC keeps him around, but I just don't see the point. 2 years away, there's no point. And if he does become a free agent, I just don't see any promotion that really want to sign him, as far as like Bellator or PFL or anything like that. I just think he's too old now. He's 36. Again, he'll be back when he's 37, 38. So to me, there's just no point of that. And I think this could be the end of the road for Mr. CB Dollaway. So that's too bad. His career might end this way. But, hey, that's a lot of stuff to test positive for, guys. That's definitely surprising. And I will say this. The guy he fought in his last fight, Khalid Murzataliev, that guy, I believe, also tested positive. So that fight was just a mess to begin with. All right, let's get into some fight announcements here, some pretty good ones. The biggest one to talk about, of course, Darren Till against Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, wow, what a fight. What a fight. This is going to be a good one. I like this matchup a lot. Darren Till is definitely on a losing streak right now and needs to get back in the win column, but he's still one of the top I'd say, I wouldn't say a superstar, but definitely a star and someone that people read about. Like I know for our numbers at BJ Penn, people read about Darren Till. They like reading about this guy. So this guy's definitely got star potential in the UFC, knows that. 26 years old, 17-2-1 record in MMA, including a 5-2-1 record in the UFC. He's coming off 2 straight stoppage losses, though, to Jorge Masvidal and Tyron Woodley. So he absolutely needs to get back on the win column. You could also say he lost to Stephen Thompson. I believe he lost that fight. So I think he's on 3-5 losing streak right now. Moving up to middleweight. So that should be interesting. I think it's a good move for Darren Till. It's a guy that really struggled to make 170. I think it did zap him of his energy. I think it zapped him of his chin, and I think he's going to look better at middleweight. He's a huge dude. Again, 26 years old, so he's growing into his frame, and I think this is the right move. Kelvin Gastelum, 27 years old, another guy that struggled to make welterweight, but he's had a lot of success at middleweight. Kelvin Gastelum, 15-4-1 record, 10-4-1 in the UFC. Coming off a decision loss to Israel Adesanya at UFC 236, one of the best fights of the year. Before that, had beaten Ronaldo Jacare Souza and Michael Bisping. This is a tough fight to call. Both guys are great, no doubt about it. I have a feeling Till might be favored just because everyone, a lot of those European guys like betting on him, and we know the books definitely have to take that into account. But I think Kelvin Gastelum's a better fighter. He's a guy that I'm making a lot of money off of pretty much his entire career in the UFC. He's almost always an underdog, and I think he wins this fight too, to be honest with you. It should be a close fight for sure. Definitely a good one. UFC 244 is getting a great fight here, but I do believe Kelvin Gastelum's a better fighter. I do believe he should win this fight. So we'll see what happens. Should be a great fight, though, either way. And good for the UFC for booking this one. It makes a lot of sense, I think, for that division. Next up, and this fight's sick, too. Lightweight bout between Niko Price and James Vick at UFC Tampa. Niko Price coming off a devastating TKO loss to Jeff Neal at UFC Edmonton, UFC 240. This guy's exciting as hell, though. I mean, look at his record, 13-3. And so he's got 16 fights, and 15 of them end inside the distance. So that's pretty incredible. In the UFC alone, he's 5-3-1 no contest, and all his wins are by stoppage. Love watching Niko Price fight. Takes on James Vick here. James Vick struggled a bit lately, 13-4 record, and in the UFC, he is 9-4, but he's lost 3 straight fights, including 2 by knockout to Justin Gaethje and Dan Hooker. That's not good. I think James Vick gets knocked out again here. I like Niko Price in this fight quite a bit. We'll see what happens as far as the odds go, but I'm expecting Price to be a decent-sized favorite. I think people will be fading James Vick here. Also, UFC Tampa, we got Thomas Gifford taking on UFC's newest signee, Brok Weaver, who's become somewhat of a cult hero here for his recent post-fight interview. Thomas Gifford, 14-8-2 no contest. He's 0-1 in the UFC, lost to Roosevelt Roberts in his debut. Not a really impressive performance. Before that, he had been unbeaten in 5 straight fights. He does have quite a bit of experience. He's fought pretty much all over the United States regional scene for I guess, 9 years now. So he has a lot of experience, but never really impressed with this guy. And he doesn't really have any notable wins on his resume. Just looking at it, I guess he's lost to a couple guys like Anthony Rocco Martin and, of course, his last fight, Roosevelt Roberts, but he's never beaten anyone good. Takes on Brok Weaver here, 13-4 record. He's on a 6-fight win streak. Looked really good against Devin Smith on the show. I like Brok Weaver in this fight. I think the UFC is setting him up for a win. They like this guy. They think he can beat Thomas Gifford, and I think so too. Next up, we have UFC Moscow fight between Ed Herman and Gadzhimurad Antigulov. Another guy, Ed Herman, who, man, you know what? Good for him for sticking around the UFC this long. He's been fighting in the octagon since 2006, and he still has a job. So good for him. Coming off a great win over Patrick Cummins. I remember picking him in that fight as an underdog. Knocked out Cummins. Before that, lost 3 straight fights. But we know Ed Herman's super tough. KO power, pretty good chin. Definitely on decline, no doubt about it. But the win over Cummins showed that he can still compete with these guys. He takes on Gadzhimurad Antigulov here, who is 2-2 in the UFC and coming off 2 straight knockout losses. This is a fight that can go either way. Gadzhimurad Antigulov is definitely a finisher, and he's got a lot of power, and he's got submission ability for sure. He has looked great at times, but he's also looked really bad times, including his last 2 fights, and he's very sloppy. This fight's going to end inside the distance. Someone's getting KO'd. I don't know. It's a tough one to call. I think if Ed Herman's available at big underdog odds, I'd take a shot on him here. But to be honest with you, Antigulov is probably going to be favored just based on the fact the fight is in Russia and based on the fact that he has a much better record. Next up, and I think this is the last one we'll talk about today, UFC Copenhagen gets a fight between Nohelin Hernandez and one of the UFC's newest signees, Jack Shore, former Cage Warriors champion. I'm excited to see this guy fight. Jack Shore is a top bantamweight prospect right now, coming out of England. He's 11-0. Like I said, he was the Cage Warriors champion. This guy's good, no doubt about it. He's really good. He's only been fighting as a pro since 2016, and almost all his fights have been Cage Warriors. Almost all his wins are by stoppage. This guy is, I think, going to have a really good career in the UFC, and he takes on Nohelin, Hernandez, and I'm going to pull him out. I believe he fought Marlon Vera in his last fight. Got to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Yep, Marlon Vera lost by submission in the second round. Before that, he had won 3 straight fights. He's fought in Bellator. He's fought in LFA. He's got some good experience. Actually, he looked better in the Vera fight than I expected him to, but I still think he loses this fight. I think the UFC is setting up Jack Shore here for a win, and I expect him to get the job done. And that fight's in UFC Copenhagen. And as far as new fight announcements go, that's about it. So some pretty good fights. But I mean, that Darren Till and Kelvin Gastelum fight, that one looks really good. And just UFC 244, I'm going to pull that card out quickly. Main event of the evening, again, it's not confirmed, but it's looking like it's going to be Colby Covington versus Usman. And then also, like I said, you have Gastelum Till, Corey Anderson versus Johnny Walker, Derek Lewis versus Pavel Ivanov, Edmund Shabazian versus Krzysztof Jotko, and Caitlin Chukagian versus Jennifer Maia. So that card's shaping up to be really good. I'm assuming they're going to save the Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal fight for UFC 245. And again, that card's looking good as well. But yeah, the UFC's definitely got some good cards coming up at the end of the year. And I'm looking forward to them. So, of course, I'll be back talking about all those cards and everything else in the world of MMA when the time comes around to it. But for now, I appreciate you guys tuning in to today's show. But I'll be back in about 30, 40 minutes to talk with Cole Shelton, breaking down UFC China. Looking forward to talking about that. Guys, follow me on Twitter at MMAOB. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Check me out at bjpenn.com and MMARings.net. Once again, tonight, in an hour, we have the UFC China preview. And tonight, Dana White's Contender Series is going to be a good card. I'm looking forward to it. Last one of the season, so definitely check it out. Guys, once again, appreciate it. I'll be back in a little bit breaking down UFC China. Have a good day.